for the Finance and Governance Committee for May 10th, 2022 to order. Madam Clerk, roll call and posting of the agenda.
Member Basua,
Here.
Member Tehran,
Here.
Chair Zaragoza.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on May 3rd, 2022.
Thank you. And Councilman Basua, can you help us salute to our flag? Mhm. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Council Member. Then our next item is item B. Any public comments not on the agenda? Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers in this item?
Not on this item. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is item C, C1, and this is City Clerk. This is approval of the minutes of the Finance and Governance Committee to approve the minutes of April 26, 2022, regular meeting. Council members. Any concerns or?
No, Mayor.
So a motion by Basua, second by Tehran. Okay, let's vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first report is, this is a Human Resource Department. The agreement is for workers' compensation claims, administration and adjustment services. In the recommendation, the Finance and Governance Committee recommended City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute agreement number A-8455 with Corvell Enterprise Comp Incorporated in the amount of not to exceed $1,515,000 for a 5-year term for workers' compensation claims administration and adjustments. And this again was measurement pre-recorded item, and we do have Steve Naval here for any, or Mr. Moore for any questions. Council members? Okay. Council Basua?
Good afternoon, Mr. Moore.
Mhm.
Yes, so I do have a question in regards to the transition from one vendor to another. Are the current claims going to stay with the current vendor, or is everything being transitioned over?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Basua, all of the claims will be transitioned over to the new vendor. And so we're actively working with that vendor to make that transition right now in advance of the July 1 conversion date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and this is a 5-year contract, right?
Mr. Mayor, yes, it is a 5-year agreement.
Agreement,
with this
okay.
vendor, yes.
So, and after 5 years, is there an opportunity for them to continue on or?
Generally, after a 5-year period, we go out to bid again. This is a fairly large agreement. And so we went out to bid 5 years ago. Ames had the contract for a total of 10 years. This time,
before
we
that.
selected Corvell to perform the work.
Okay, council members, any? No? Recommendation?
Second.
Okay, so first by Basua, second by Councilman Sharon. Please vote. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Our next item is the Finance Department. This is a resolution of the City Council and Oxnard Financing Authority approving the issuance of up to $19,200,000 in principal of a 2022 local obligation revenue refunding bonds to refund a series of 2012 bonds. The recommendation, the Finance and Governance Committee recommended City Council and the City Finance Authority Board approve and authorize the following. 1, the resolution of City Council of the City of Oxnard approving the First Amendment to the local financing document and the execution of certain certificates relating to the issuance by the City Council Finance Authority of refunding revenue bonds for the purpose of refunding its outstanding series 2012 bonds. And 2, resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Oxnard Financing Authority authorizing the sale and issuance and delivery of not more than $19,200,000 in principal amount of a local obligation refunding bonds, special district bond, and approving certain documents and authorizing certain accents and connection therein. And this is a live presentation by a consultant. Betsy George.
Mayor, Ms. George had a death in the family and cannot be here tonight, unfortunately. So I'm going to do my best to help on the staff side, but we do have Craig Hill and Christian Sprunger here from NHA Advisors. They're going to give the presentation. And whatever the three of us can't answer, we will get back to you before the council meeting.
Thank you, Sherry. Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor Zaragoza, council members. Christian Sprunger here. I'm an assistant vice president with NHA Advisors. My colleague Craig's also present.
Okay.
We're the city's municipal financial advisor. I'm going to share my screen right now, so bear with me a moment while I do
Okay.
that. Okay, I've begun sharing my screen. I hope you can see it and hear me fine.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great, thank you. This afternoon, I'll be speaking with you regarding a refunding opportunity for the outstanding 2012 local obligation revenue bonds, Series A and B. The recommendation tonight is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council and the Board of Directors of the City of Oxnard Financing Authority authorize the issuance of up to 19.2 million of refunding bonds, and also authorize documents related to those refunding bonds. There are 6 documents that are included in the agenda packet, and we'll discuss those further on a subsequent slide. To provide a little bit of background, the 2012 Series A and B local obligation revenue bonds were issued with an original combined par or principal amount of 28.6 million, of which about 18.8 million is outstanding. The bonds were issued to purchase underlying bonds related to 3 districts: Assessment District 2001-1 around the intersection of Rice Avenue and Highway 101, CFD number 1, that's Westport at Mandalay Bay, CFD number 2000-3, that's around the intersection of Oxnard Boulevard and Highway 101. These 3 districts levy tax assessments and special taxes annually to pay the debt service on the bonds. The Series A bonds, that's the dark orange series in the graph. I hope you can see it. I hope it shows up on the screen. With the dark orange series on the bottom of that graph there on the right. Those are senior to the Series B bonds. I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, but go ahead. We can see it.
Oh, great, thank you. Those are senior to the Series B bonds, which means that they get paid first, essentially. The Series A bonds were issued with an A- credit rating from S&P Global Ratings. The Series B bonds, the lighter orange series on the top there, those were issued subordinate and do not have a credit rating. Combined, the Series A and B bonds have a debt service that's escalating at about 1% per year through 2032, and then it steps down in 2033. The first optional call date on these outstanding 2012 A and B bonds is approaching. And so despite moves up in the interest rates recently, there's still an opportunity to refinance the outstanding bonds for interest rate savings. We expect that the refunding bonds, unlike the original 2012 A and B bonds, the refunding would be sold directly to a private investor, likely a regional or a national bank. We have a bid packet out on the street to banks, and we expect responses around the middle of next week with their interest rates and terms. Currently, though, we're estimating an interest rate of about 3.25% on the refunding. That's compared to an interest rate of 4.87% on the outstanding bonds. I do want to note, though, the actual interest rate will be subject to the bids we receive from the banks. These are estimates based on current market.
Okay, can I, if this is subject to, isn't the interest rate going up right now? Is that going to affect us?
Yes, there is certainly risk that the interest rates move up. And so part of what's included in the authorization for tonight is that we're asking the Finance and Governance Committee to recommend to council that there's a cap on that interest rate for the refunding bonds. So I'll dig into that a little bit more on a subsequent slide, but we do include a cap on that interest rate as far as how the refunding would go forward. An interest rate of 3.25% would result in approximately 170,000 average annual debt service savings on the bonds. This results in an aggregate cash flow of about 1.85 million, or in present value, today's terms, That'd be about 1.15 million net of costs associated with issuing the refunding bonds. As a percentage of par, this is about 6.4%. To provide a frame of reference, the city's debt management policy identifies a minimum 3% target. So at 6.4%, we estimate we'll be well above that minimum. These savings would represent approximately an 8% reduction in tax levies on the assessed parcels starting in fiscal year 2024. Oh, sorry. The graph there, I meant to touch on this. The graph on the right shows the orange line is the current debt service on the 2012 A and B bonds. It's a combined debt service there shown in that line. The blue bars is the estimated refunding debt service. You can see we're preserving more or less the structure. We're just taking savings in every year effectively. No extension of final maturity, nothing like that. The city's financing team for this proposed refunding is shown here on this slide. Many of these financing team members have worked with the city in the past on recent transactions. The new name on this list is Piper Sandler. The city engaged them as placement agent for the transaction after a competitive RFP process. To summarize the documents being approved tonight, there's 5 boxes here, but there are 6 documents. So the first gray box, the authorizing resolutions, there's one for the city and there's one for the financing authority. And these authorizing resolutions would give staff the authority to proceed, provided that maximum not to exceed numbers are not met. The not to exceed interest rate we put in there is a 3.87%. That's the maximum rate we could get and still achieve that minimum 3% savings that the city's debt management policy identifies. Currently, to reiterate, we estimate it's around a 3.25%, but we are asking to provide that not to exceed a 3.87, just to provide a little bit of flexibility in case the market were to move against us. The Indenture of Trust, the blue box in the middle of the top there, that formalizes the relationship between the financing authority and the trustee. It outlines the terms of the 2022 bonds, including the payment schedule and prepayment options. The placement agent agreement on the top right there, that's between the city and Piper Sandler. Again, Piper Sandler is functioning as the placement agent for the transaction. The fee paid to Piper Sandler and to the other financing professionals is contingent upon a successful close of the refunding. The irrevocable refunding instructions outline the logistics by which the trustee is going to refund the outstanding 2012 A and B bonds. And then finally, the First Amendment to the local agency financing documents, that amends the original 2012 documents for each of those 3 underlying districts to refer to the 2022 bonds instead of the 2012 bonds.
Okay.
Regarding timing, we have our, I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, regarding timing, we have a request for bids out on the street. We've asked banks to provide responses by the middle of next week. Following that, we'll work with the banks, with the selected bank, the most advantageous bank, to lock the rate to the extent possible and finalize the documents for the 2022 bonds. We expect to bring the item to council on June 30th and then close in mid-July. To reiterate, a twofold recommendation that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council and the Board of the City of Oxnard Financing Authority authorize the 19.2 million not to exceed number and then approve the documents related to the issuance of the bonds. And with that, I'll see if there are any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Craig, the Oxnard Boulevard and Highway 1, that's a long, that was going back, what, about 20 years or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And is it wise to refi that portion? I mean, because we're so close to paying that off or being completed.
The bonds related to the underlying districts are outstanding till 2033, and so we're essentially replacing the current loan with a new loan. at a lower interest rate.
But,
Go ahead.
but then the time stays the same, the 23?
That's correct. The final
okay,
maturity
okay.
isn't changing. We're not extending the debt service,
Oh,
the
so
maturity
that
on
ma-
this.
That makes sense then. And you said the savings was how much, the cumulative savings would,
Approximate,
1.85?
correct. Assuming our 3.25% interest rate, the cumulative savings would be about 170,000 a year, translates into about 1.85 million
1.85.
over the course of the remaining life.
That's pretty significant too anyway, which I think, just for information. Okay, council members, Councilman Tehran? Mhm.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger, for the presentation, as always. The mayor touched on it already, but at 3.25% interest rate anticipated, we'd save around 170,000 annually with the net savings over the remainder of the life of that bond of 1.85 million. In the slide you had with the timeline, one of the points there had a request of locking in the interest rate. My question is, what is the likelihood that they will want to do that, to lock in the interest rate from the bank side?
Very good question. I'm going to have my colleague Craig Hill jump in on the answer to this and also provide some additional thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. From a process perspective, we have a bid package on the street to a number of banks right now. What we're asking them to do is give us an interest rate next week that they would hold through the term until we can get this financed or get this closed. So the unknown will be whether the banks, given the current market conditions, will want to lock an interest rate for that long. But that's what we're asking.
So can I add a little bit to that? So potentially it could be about a 60-day period, more or less? Okay.
That's correct. It would be about a 60-day interest rate lock is what we're requesting. As Craig mentioned, we won't know until we receive the bids whether they'll lock it for that period.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And along those lines, if thinking worst case scenario here, if the interest rate's higher than what we anticipated, or it's not as advantageous for whatever reason, or they're unwilling to lock it, what obligation does the city have? Are we able to walk away at that point or go to another potential funder or bank?
Refine.
Yes, the city is not obligated. We're asking for a not to exceed of 3.87%. If the rate is higher than that, then the deal would not happen. We would not be meeting that 3% savings threshold. The city could go out to bid again, could go with a different bank. There are options, and the city is not locking themselves in at this point.
Great, thank you for that. And my last question, I think our staff can probably help with that. For the Highway 101 interchange bond, do we, as I understand it, would that affect residents in River Park and Wagon Wheel most directly? Or when it was mentioned in the presentation that there might be a lowering in the amount that they pay in that bond, are those the residents who we'd have in mind for that?
So there is a defined number of properties that are within each of the underlying districts that would benefit from this refinancing. As you know, Wagon Wheel had its own financing most recently. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember, for some projects. We'd have to ask the administrator, NBS, who I know is actually participating tonight for some other work. But there may be common parcels that are in both districts. We don't have that information in front of us tonight.
Okay, that's fine. I was just wondering about that. All right, those are my questions, Mayor, and it sounds like the dog had thoughts on it too, so I'll have to weigh that in my decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, but we do have a cushion there for the 60 days that you mentioned. Councilman Basu? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I will move the recommended action.
Okay, this is first by Tehran, second by Basua. Please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian and Craig. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item, item 3, this is the Technology Department. This is second amendment to the Superior Central Square Software License Agreement, A 8011. And the recommendation that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a second amendment to the software license agreement, A 8011, with Superior LLC and Central Square Company in the amount of $340,627, so not to exceed the agreement of $1,458,505 for the information technology software services. And this is, again, it was required by Measure M as a pre-recorded presentation. And we have Helen Miller for any additional information. Council members, any additional, Councilman Turan?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, Ms. Miller. Thank you very much for being here and for this item. I know that the pre-recorded video was required per Measure M. I see that there are 11 views as of now, and 3 of them are up here. And I'm just hoping that you would just take a moment to share for the benefit of the public a little bit about what we have in front of us.
Certainly, and good evening. This is a contract amendment to add additional funds to support our HTE Central Square system, which is the city's ERP system, Enterprise Resource Planning System, supporting utility billing, business licensing, tax revenue collection, and payroll and HR and financials. And the reason that we need to do an additional amendment to this agreement is driven by 4 factors. One is fluctuating credit card processing fees that change over time based on usage. 2 is the fact that Central Square is a very large company, and they've had numerous mergers and acquisitions, acquiring companies that the city already did business with. So that increases the amount that we have to pay out to this vendor annually. And 3rd, the vendor also will initiate ERP upgrades, things that we must do, and we don't have a choice to continue using the system. And a recent example of that is they discontinued their credit card processing module, requiring us to go out and select another credit card vendor that needs to integrate into their system, and there's costs associated with doing that as well. So that's one example. And 3rd is the modern ERP implementation that's been started. That's a multi-year project to implement Tyler Munis. And Tyler Munis will be eventually replacing HTE. But as part of that project, we occasionally need HTE services to be able to support that with technological environments to do testing or customization and reporting and things that support the Tyler Munis project.
Thank you very much.
And Helen, you know, the software is changing all the time, you know, so it seems like it changed every 3 months, you know.
That's
That's what it seems like
the
anyway.
industry now, yes.
So we have to really stay up to speed with
We
the
do.
software to make sure that we process our data properly, so. Okay, council members, Basua? No? Okay, first by Basua.
I'll second.
Second by Turan. Roll call. Please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Our item number 4 is, this is the Finance Department, and this is introduction to fiscal year 2023 proposed operating budget. The recommendation that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council and Housing Authority Board conduct a public hearing on the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget on June the 7th, 2022 for the City of Oxnard, the Housing Authority, and provide staff direction regarding the adjustments to the proposed budget in preparation for final budget adoption on June 21, 22. And this, again, there was a pre-recorded item presentation. And Betsy George, again, here, or who's taking?
So I'll be
Should we-
filling in
should-
for Ms. George. If
Okay.
there are technical questions, we'll be bringing them back.
First of all, you know, I'd just like to share, you know, the budget, I think, is an excellent budget that was put together, you know, and if people have not seen it, the public have not seen it, the pictorial part of it is really, really great, you know, where it shows how we started off back when we had an $8.7 million deficit, and we went all the way through, up and down through the pandemic, and then right up to Measure E, and also, how we're going from point A to point B with each department. So I am not going to mention any numbers because there's a lot of numbers in there, but I believe that staff did an excellent job, and I know that some of the wants from some of the departments were X billions of dollars, where we could only afford maybe a third of those dollars. I think it was 32 million, where we could only afford 10 to 12. And I just want to commend the departments for that, because it's a budget. It's a 3-year budget that we're looking at, and potentially maybe a 4th year. But again, I just think it's an excellent budget that staff put together. And again, one of the things I mentioned to the city manager earlier, that a budget to me is a roadmap. It's a roadmap that requires adjustments as we progress. And I want the public to understand that, because many times you say, well, you're going to do X, but Y happened. That's why it's called a budget, because it's a roadmap, and that really is what it is. And I think it's a good roadmap. And I just like to commend our staff, for the excellent work working with the city manager, working with the financial director, and anyway, I just think it's great, personally. Councilman Turan? Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Basua. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen, our city manager, and Ms. George, our CFO. I have a couple questions on this. Some are just reminders for the public. Some are actual questions just for clarification. First and foremost, let me go back to my notes here. First, I do want to thank the city manager and Ms. George for prefacing the entire presentation on the budget by saying that there's no bad news. There's no cuts. We're looking at what we're prioritizing, how we're meeting the council priorities that were set by the city council, and with input from the community and staff. And so this is a really good news, sunny sky budget, and I'm really happy to hear that. I also appreciate that we're looking towards 2029 already, looking at living within our means in 2022 for what we anticipate is going to be the sunset of Measure O in 2028, 2029. So thank you for having the forethought on that and having us prepare for that, and not living beyond our means, and being very realistic about what our revenues will be throughout this decade. Question I have, let's see, first clarifying question is, I'm hoping that just for a second, if either our city manager or our deputy city manager would mind referring to slides 10 and 11, just to remind the public about what percentage the city of Oxnard actually gets for every dollar of property taxes, and then how much we get for every dollar of sales taxes.
There's a nice photo on this, on that.
It's slides 10 and 11.
Mhm.
Thank you, Councilmember Turan. So on the property taxes, the city of Oxnard receives 17.6%. As you can see by this slide, the schools receive most of the property taxes, 56.3%. The county receives some, and there's other county districts that also receive some. So we only receive 17.6 cents on the dollar on property taxes. On sales taxes, the state receives a large portion again, and then the county realignment programs also receive a large portion, and there are multiple sub-portions that come solely to Oxnard. We get 1%. And then Measure E adds 1.5%, which the voters recently passed. And then Measure O adds another 0.5%. So our total is 3% that we solely receive. There's also 2 other smaller portions of sales tax. You're correct in pointing out, we do not receive the lion's share of the property taxes or the sales taxes here at City Hall.
Thank you for that. And I think it's important that folks are reminded of that because it's a legitimate question to say, where do my tax dollars go? What are they being spent on? Well, know that before it ever gets to your front door for local services, it goes through a number of other filters first, through schools, through the county, through other districts. And then for sales tax, it goes to the state first, then it goes to other places too before it finally lands at the city of Oxnard. And you may have heard people say that the city of Oxnard has the highest sales tax in the county. I've even heard someone use some verbal gymnastics and say that we have the highest sales tax in the state, which is not true. The city of Pico Rivera is at 10.25%, I believe, which I think is as high as you could possibly go. And there are a number of cities who are far higher than the city of Oxnard is now. When people say the city of Oxnard has the dubious title of being one of the ones with the highest percentage, what they're actually saying is that, my opinion, we're one of the smartest, that we actually had our voters decide, do we want to keep our sales tax local? And that Measure E money is doing exactly that. It's staying in this city. It's not getting filtered to the state and then to the county. It's coming directly to the city of Oxnard after the state releases it to us. So that's how you see all those Measure E projects happening out in the community. So thank you for clarifying that. One last question I have is regarding cultural and community services. And looking at what was proposed in the budget, and I believe it's on slide 21 or 22. Let's see. Yes, so culture and community services in the 21-22 fiscal year, we have that they got 2.9 million as their base. And now in the new fiscal year, it's 170,000. And I'm just hoping that we can clarify, or we're not reducing the amount they're getting, right? We are actually adding to what their base was last year. And it's just that based on their current programming, this is what they need at this point moving forward. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you. So I wanted to make that clear for folks, is that we are not divesting culture community services. We're actually adding a little bit more, but it was the response of that department that moving into the next fiscal year, this is what they will need for enhanced programming based on what they saw this year. All right, those are my questions, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Basua.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm, mhm.
I want to just kind of highlight a few of the slides, and I know we can't pull them up. But one thing that when I was looking at this report that was given to us, slide number 5 talks about fiscal responsibility. And I think I've been harping on this for a very long time as far as planning with the 2029 budget in mind. And I want to thank staff for that, because it's extremely important, at least for me as a council member, that we look beyond what we have for the next 3 to 4 or 5 years, and we continue to wean off Measure O in order to make the city sustainable, because it does look good within the next 5-7 years, but what happens after that, which to me is one of the most important things that we do here as policymakers. So I really want to commend staff for looking at that now. The other thing that I do want to make a comment, the city manager made a comment in regards to McDonald's. He had a slide on there as far as competitive wages that McDonald's offers, 30% of employees discount, flexible hours, and tuition assistance. I just want to make a comment. My first job was at McDonald's, and we used to get 50% off. They've decreased. They decreased their benefits. I was kind of like, what? We used to eat for 50% off. So those French fries were actually.
But did you get free French fries?
We actually, we only got free drinks. We had to, everything else was half price. So I just want to make sure that I saw that and I kind of, giggled inside. The other thing that I want to highlight on this report that I really want to pay attention to is as we're looking at the departments and the proposed investments that we're making, and I know Miss Betsy George is in here today, I wanted to highlight the organizational effect that we're doing as far as what is it that we're doing on staff levels. I do see improvements in service delivery to the 911 system, EMS training, and And that, I think, really needs to be highlighted because it might not be only positions, but it's also additional training that we're putting out there for our employees. So I want to make sure that we highlight those things that we are doing for the community. And last but not least, and I'm going to end again with Measure O, going to be like a broken record here. I see that this time around we're taking 21 full-time employees out of Measure O and putting them into the general fund, if that's correct. And then we're going to go ahead and do one-time projects, sort of as resurfacing IT equipment, pay down the Station 8 bond and the library Wi-Fi. These are a lot of the things that I would like to see moving forward, weaning off of it, doing one-time projects, and continuing to see these things as we move forward. And that's all my comments. Thank you.
I think that winning process is really important because I talked to the city manager about that. There's $4.7 million and the circle there of actually adding those, winning off those, I think is really, really important, for the committee to understand, because we're looking at the 2029, winning process. And this is a good step, to start that.
And Mayor, council member, that process is going to it's come before the Measure O committee. It will be coming before your council soon, and you'll have the opportunity to tell us exactly what switches you'd like to see if you don't like what we propose. So
great. And again, just to add to the, we come out with the priorities that we put together, and I think, here's the first phase where we're looking at the parks are looking much better. Our streets, we're getting paved. Our alleys, we're going to start on alleys. We're looking at the police department, at 911, adding additional police officers, and the infrastructure over in Colonia, we're replacing pipes, left and right. They're 100 and some years old, and so we're doing a lot of things, and people keep saying, how about my street? How about now? We got good things happening. People complaining about good things that we're doing, and as I mentioned before, we have, and I really mean that 98% of the people say we're doing great, and again, like I mentioned the other day, 2%. Well, you'll never satisfy. I don't care what happens. Somebody's always going to complain. But I just want to commend staff, and Mr. City Manager and your staff. You're doing an excellent job. Thank you for a good budget, and we're going to have the second positive budget this year. So thank you so much for the good work. Council member.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two more quick points on that. I want to thank Councilmember Basso for bringing up the slide about McDonald's. One of my first jobs was also at McDonald's, and my store, they did give us food occasionally for free, but not all the time. It depended on what was going on. And but I do want to point out that the point of that slide is a really important one. And if staffing our programming and our city positions are needed, such as in city core or parks or those types of jobs, but we're having trouble filling them because, believe it or not, we would compete with something like McDonald's, where it says competitive starting wage. I know when I was there, I think it was $4.25 an hour is what you would start at. And I'm sure the city at that time was much different than that. But also looking at this, they also get the employee discount, they get flexible hours, and they get $3,000 in tuition assistance.
Right.
How could a municipality who's looking for entry-level folks to come into these types of roles compete with something like that? Even at McDonald's, a fairly entry-level food service job. And so I hope that the general public understands the nuances of this, that now that we have the funding and we're able to fill positions that we previously couldn't to carry out the services that people are requesting, now it's difficult to fill the positions because of competition out there. And did you have something you wanted to respond with, City Manager?
Yes, we need to invest in a French fry factory.
That's it. That's the last point I wanted to make is to remind folks that this video is available for the public. It was put together by our city manager and Miss George. And on Thursday, I will be showing a live stream of that video for folks to tune into. So please, if you don't get to watch it on your own, you can watch it live this Thursday at 6 p.m.
And also it's on the website, city website, which I think.
Yes, it's on the city website.
So anyway, the only thing, I never worked for McDonald's, but I like their coffee. They have good coffee. So we need a motion, is that? Okay, recommended by Basua, second by Turan. Please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
And I know it's a big budget, and I know I just want to share that. I just want to commend staff again for excellent work. Okay, item number 5 is Public Works Department is fiscal year 2022-23 Landscaping Maintenance District. Initiation of proceeding, declaration of intention to levy and collect assessment and scheduling a public hearing. And the recommendation that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council, acting as a legislative body of the City of Oxnard Landscape Maintenance District, LMDs, 1, adopt a resolution initiating proceedings for the annual levy and collection of assessment for fiscal year 22-23 within the city LMDs. And 2, adopt a resolution declaring intention to levy and collect assessment fiscal year 22-23 when the city LMDs pursuant to Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. And this again was a pre-recorded item. And of course, then Michael Wolff. Oh, there you are. Any questions for Michael on this item? Council members? Any questions? Well, you're lucky.
Yeah, the
We
next
got
one.
a
will be
first
the
and a
good-
second. First by Basua, second by Turan. Please vote. Okay.
Motion passes 3-0.
Michael, you feel left out? Our next item.
This one will be a big one.
The next item is, this is a public works item, fiscal year 2023 special tax levy for a community facility district number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 2000-3. The recommendation of this Finance and Governance Committee recommended the City Council acting as a legislative body for the community facility district CFD number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 2000-3. 1, adopt a resolution setting a special tax rate for CFD number 1, Westport and Mandalay Bay for fiscal year 2022-23. 2, adopt a resolution setting a special rate within CFD number 2, Westport and Mandalay Bay for fiscal year 22-23. 3, adopt a resolution setting a special tax for CFD number 3, Sea Bridge and Mandalay Bay for 22-23. 4, adopt a resolution setting a special tax for CFD 4, Sea Bridge and Mandalay Bay for 22-23. 5, adopt a resolution setting a special tax rate for CFD number 5, River Park for fiscal year 22-23. And 6, adopt a resolution setting a special tax rate for CFD number 2003, Oxnard Boulevard / Highway 101 interchange for fiscal year 22-23. And 7, authorize a public works director and designate to execute an agreement for billing of direct assessment with the Ventura County Auditor Controller to provide services and place them by direct assessment on the Ventura County Secure Tax Roll. And of course, this is a pre-recorded item, and we have Michael Wolff for the additional information. And my understanding that we have a speaker on this item, and we'll start off, Michael, with a speaker to start off. And we have Ty Hartley for 3 minutes. Ty Hartley, 3 minutes. Okay.
Ty? Ty, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please go ahead.
Let's see, Ty, is that Ty with it?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Got
Please
3
go
minutes.
ahead.
3 minutes time.
Thank you. Ty Hartley, resident of River Park. I have 2 items to address in regard to preventing CFD 5 from moving forward until more residents have an opportunity to weigh in. The first is the annual budget review process, and the second is the landscaping contract with the current vendor that expires in November. Starting with the annual budget for the upcoming fiscal year, I was not fully aware until the night of the neighborhood council meeting on April 24th. That was pretty much the deadline for the community to have input. Had this been made more clear in advance, there would have been more time to communicate to residents to get involved. I'm also dissatisfied that on several occasions, a city staff member has tried to suggest that certain meetings be limited to neighborhood council members for the draft review. I disagree, and I have previously expressed that all community members should have been offered the opportunity to attend any review session. One of the functions of the neighborhood council is to help bridge the gap of communication. However, it should not be considered the primary source of outreach for the annual budget review when there are more than 2,500 households in the community. There is also nothing that hands authority to the neighborhood council in relation to the CFD to make decisions on the residents' behalf. Last year, the lack of community engagement set off a fury of upset residents when they found out they were about to be hit by a 15% increase. There should have been more community engagement so they are aware how funds are managed. Ultimately, we got a reduction due to me encouraging people to speak out. Several months ago, I had asked a staff member for quotes for a direct mail piece with the intention to make residents aware special districts is incorporated into monthly neighborhood meetings and also provide a timeline when to expect the annual budget review process to begin. I did not get the information, and we're too far along now to go this route. It is not reasonable to assume that all homeowners are aware they can be involved in the annual process or when it takes place. There is also insufficient outreach from the city for off-site property owners that may not get their information from social media or me. As a personal effort for additional outreach, I put out information on multiple platforms in regard to the CFD. Expanded communication should be the responsibility of city staff and not the responsibility of the neighborhood council or myself as a resident. These are the reasons why a direct mail communication should have been used. The second issue is the landscape contract with the current vendor will expire in November. This should be taken into consideration for the upcoming fiscal year and may warrant the draft budget be reconfigured. I have confirmed with the county auditor's office that the report is not due until July 5th. Due to these reasons, I'm asking that CFD 5 be pulled from further review tonight and allow more time.
Time is up.
Thank you, Time. Thank you so much. Okay,
Mayor, we
Yes.
have one more speaker.
one more speaker, go on. Okay.
Public speaker with phone number ending in 6377. Please unmute by pressing *6.
Hello,
Hi, yes, may I please have your name?
this is Manuel Herrera calling.
Yes, Mr. Herrera, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Manuel Herrera. I'm the creator of Citizens for a Better Oxnard. This message is for the River Park residents. Beware. Ty Hartley is trying to play both sides of the fence here. On one hand, she's trying to say that the River Park budget process needs to be transparent and include River Park residents in the decision. On the other hand, Aaron Starr, who is pulling her puppet strings, is working to eliminate the CFD altogether. For the first point about her wanting a transparent process, her actions don't match her words. I have heard from a number of River Park residents who are upset because she did little to nothing to promote her last neighborhood council meeting, a meeting where city staff presented on the entire River Park budget. She's asking for transparency, but she is sabotaging her own community's chance to be fully involved in the budget process. Why didn't she tell the entire community well ahead of time about that very important meeting? She cheated them out of their chance to participate. Is that truly how an elected chair should serve their own community? I know she's blaming you guys for that, but this is her responsibility. To the second point about her also trying to eliminate the CFD altogether, think critically on this, people, or should I say, think critically, River Park residents. The rest of us in the city, we don't have a say in this. If the River Park voters choose to eliminate their CFD or reduce their services, such as policing for River Park, what is to stop Ty, from demanding that the city's general fund pays for the services she and Star eliminated? I hope River Park and all other areas realize that this means older areas like La Colonia and South Winds may have to give up services so that River Park can be kept looking nice. Also, don't forget that Aaron Starr previously wrote 3 measures in which he tricked the voters into voting for that were later found to be illegal by the courts. So River Park residents, don't be fooled. These are Aaron Starr's ballot measures, not Ty Hartley's. So be careful what you ask for, because you know how the saying goes. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any additional speakers?
We do not have any additional speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, council members, any questions of Michael, our Public Works Director? Or go ahead, Councilman Tron. Mhm.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering if the staff has any responses regarding any of the statements that were made by the speakers regarding outreach for the CFD 5 for River Park.
Good evening, committee members. Michael Wolff, Director of Public Works. Just want to make some logistical announcements. Eric Story, sitting here to my right, is our Special Districts Manager. He'll be able to answer some questions. You also have folks from MBS on the call who are our technical experts. I'll give a general response, and then Eric can provide some more details. There are quite a bit of opportunities that we've expressed to River Park Neighborhood Council about meeting with them routinely, going over budget documents. We have a few emails that express the opportunity for us to meet with them monthly or quarterly. I believe Eric's team, and he can go over the details, have met with them to go over what we call quarterly statements of how their funds are being expended. And as mentioned in one of the public speakers, there was a meeting in April that went over in detail the proposed budget and some options and some discussions. And I believe only 4 or 5 folks attended that. And also I would say this is an opportunity tonight for input into the budget process. The INCO, we had a discussion about the city's budget last week, an opportunity to talk about requests for budgets and what, not necessarily just city budget, but CFD budget. So I think there's been a lot of opportunity offered. I think that we can do a better job. I agree that there is some opportunity for us to be a little more proactive. And so as we go through the process next year, there'll be certainly an opportunity for us to have meetings as a staff level to go over whoever wants to discuss our budgets. And so I think there's opportunity for us to improve, but I still think there was a lot of opportunities out there for folks to have input on the budget.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to respectfully counter just a little bit there, Mr. Wolff, in that I was one of the 5 in attendance at the River Park Neighborhood Council meeting in April. And there were, to their credit, there were 4 residents who came out, and they had a great presentation by Mr. Story and Mr. Miller. I have to give them full credit. I emailed the following day to commend them for putting together the comprehensive presentation on the budget. Whether there were 4 people there or 400 people there, it was information that was really important for the community. I want to thank your team for putting that together. From last year, my first year on the council, I will agree with Ms. Hartley that communication from our city staff to River Park residents could have been improved. And that was one of the requests that I had made of staff after that process had completed, was that we be much more intentional about outreach. And I want to commend you, Mr. Wolff, and then your interim predecessor, and to your special districts team for being readily available for conversations with River Park residents, specifically the Neighborhood Council Executive Board, and being willing to provide regular updates. I think I've attended almost every River Park Neighborhood Council meeting from last year to this year, and they are there regularly. They have regular updates and answer questions as requested. can things be improved? We could always find ways for improvement. And so I appreciate us always looking at how we can continuously look at that. Bless you. And one thing I do want to point out is for River Park for tonight, I made a post on the largest River Park group on social media, letting folks know, here's the information, here's the video, here's the staff report. If you have comments, you can send them to the city clerk. You can speak at the meeting. And we did have folks who did send in comments. And we had folks who spoke tonight. So I appreciate that. I'm hoping that as we move forward, more intentional outreach, as we talked about, can glean more from folks if they feel it necessary to speak on the item. The last thing I'll say is I have to respectfully disagree with Ms. Hartley on a statement she made about neighborhood councils, that not only the neighborhood council should be given the power to make decisions about the budget. Well, the neighborhood council is not a club. Like, people don't join that and become members. Neighborhood council is a public meeting, and that council is entrusted with including and updating the entire community for that neighborhood on important neighborhood issues. And maybe it's a difference in philosophy between Ms. Hartley and I, but when I was a neighborhood council chair, every item that had to do with our neighborhood was important, and it needed to go before the residents, and the residents would come if it was important to them. And it was up to me to let them know as chair, this is what's going on. This is what the implications are. We're going to have it on the agenda. Please come out. So, that's why it's a public meeting. That's why they had an elected executive board. Those folks are entrusted by their community to connect the community to the city and keep them updated on city happenings that affect the community directly. So that's a respectful counter to that comment, but moving forward, I would imagine that we can't just halt the item tonight, as she had mentioned at the end of her comment there. We do have a timeline set in this, I'm imagining. Is that correct, Mr. Wolff?
That's correct. And it was mentioned about when we need to get items to the county. It's not, we want to deliver it the very next day. There's a process by which we have to, once the levy is assessed, do the tax roll, do a QA/QC, get that to the county. So it's not just a one-day kind of process. So that's why we're backing into this process, so we don't miss those critical path items to get it to them by that time.
I appreciate that. And I do want to say that, regarding or regardless of how the committee moves it forward tonight or decides to take that request to halt it, I will commit to working with staff on in making sure that we do have some more intentional work between now and the next time this comes up to a public meeting, to make sure River Park residents are aware of it and they have access to the information.
Michael, the question I have, what does the CFD cover there at the River Park? What are the services that they cover?
So I'll ask Eric Story to go over some of the general items. Maybe Eric can go into detail. I did want to just add one more thing, where I think that there are some overlap and some efficiencies for us next year is as we see our city budget going through, we're also doing our CFD budget. So that integration is also tough because it happens at the same time. So I think that there are some efficiencies and improvements that can happen next year for that. But I agree with what Councilmember Turan was saying. But
and also at the same time, when it comes up, is does the neighborhood council, is the neighborhood council also speaking for the CFD, or what's a relationship there other than being residents?
So the CFD is governed by the council. So the governing board is the council. Obviously, because we're spending funds in that area, we want to make sure that we get input from the folks who live there. I mean, we're talking about landscaping and irrigation and park improvements and all those things. So we don't want to go off the rails and go down a different direction that the neighborhood is not interested in. There are some basic level of service and some emergency services and sort of safety services that we would recommend and not want to change. But there are some of the things like what kinds, do we want to do more planting? Do we want to, do we want to add more trees? Obviously with drought, that's a different conversation. But certainly those kinds of inputs we would want, and we relish those inputs from the neighborhood to make sure we're going in a good direction. So maybe Eric can talk about some of the services that are provided.
So that way, the residents understand what the CFD covers, which I think is important.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Story. I'm your Special Districts Manager. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
The services improvements to be funded by the district include maintenance of parks, parkways, and open space, recreation program services, library services, maintenance service for elementary, secondary schools and structures, flood and stormwater protection services, costs incurred for the formation of the district, ongoing administrative fees of the district, the city of Oxnard, any trustee, fiscal agent, or financial administrator related to the district. Reimbursement of costs for formation of the district advanced by the city or landowners, police protection service, fire protection and suppression services, ambulance and paramedic services, local park, recreation, parkway, and open space facilities.
So that's a tremendous amount of service, you know, that,
So the list that was provided obviously are things that could be covered. In our last year, through the assessment process, what was taken out was the fire services. So that's not being recommended again this year, similar to last year, but it's an eligible cost should we go through the process that was discussed in October, that resolution. There's a process for it, but those are a laundry list of services that could be used for the CFD funding.
so, and the CFD was created initially with the sale of the homes and so forth, as part of the sales.
Part of the entitlement process. So as part, in order for that project to be entitled and constructed, the process included a requirement to establish a Melrose Act or CFD.
Right, right. Which I think is important, you know, when people buy properties, they need to understand, you know, that it takes a certain amount of monies to take care of the landscaping and police and fire and et cetera, which I think is extremely important.
Right, and those are disclosures that are provided to property owners before they purchase their property. The disclosures of Melrose or disclosures of assessment districts are in there.
Okay, and no, you're good? Any additional questions? I know this is a real tremendous amount of work, but we have a timeline too that we have to meet. You know, that's important, you know, to work with the county also, which I think is extremely important.
Right, and as we finish the city budget, we'll be able to put together a lot more, or put together the final details of the CFD budget. So when it does come to council, we'll have a very detailed rate and method of apportionment that goes with it, that specifically identifies the levy process.
Councilmember Turan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one more quick question. All of the items in the recommendation here, all of the CFDs and the anyone from any of these CFDs, they have another opportunity to speak on this, right? This is not us setting it in stone as a Finance and Governance Committee, correct?
That is correct.
That's exactly right, because it's going to go to the city council. They have an opportunity to share additional information then.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and by Councilman Basua, second by Councilor Ron. Please vote. And Michael, again, thank you. You know, that I know it's a tremendous amount of work, and we do, and thank you for Eric for good work, like always.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And okay, our next item is item E, any items for future agendas? Council members? No? Okay, so we are adjourned till 6:30, our next committee. Thank you so much to our staff. And Sherry, thank you.